2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Subdivision Street Funding Task Force. I'm going to read some introductory language in, and then we'll get started shortly. Please note there is no physical location to observe and listen to this meeting. We are utilizing the Zoom webinar for this virtual meeting. All members of the task force can communicate synchronously on this platform. Should any member experience technical difficulties, please call 302-744-4146. The public is permitted to participate in today's hearings by registering via the meeting link on the task force meeting notice that is posted on the General Assembly's website. Should the public be unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Instructions for providing public comment are posted on the General Assembly's website under this task force meeting notice and agenda, and the agenda will be provided during the public comment portion of the meeting. Please note any votes that may be taken shall be done by roll call. We'll start with attendance. Task force members, please ensure your cameras are on as much as possible. When your name is called, please unmute and affirm your attendance. Rep. Matthews, present. Senator Walsh.
Present.
Rep. Smith, I think, will be joining us shortly. Senator Hocker has a designee here, I believe. Is that Carrie Rappa?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll mark present there. Secretary Majeski has Deputy Secretary Shante Hastings here.
Afternoon.
Michael McConnell from OMB.
Present.
The Controller General and her staff are in JFC now, so they were unable to attend. We'll be linking up with them afterwards. And then Rep. Heffernan and Rep. Senator Poore will join when they are available. So should be a pretty quick meeting today. Kind of the agenda is to just discuss, as we're coming toward the due date here of March 1st for the final report. We've been working on some stuff, summarizing the meetings and different pieces. We want to make sure we're on the right path as we head down that way. I want to go through, I have a potential introduction drafted up. We'll go through that. We have a report that will be showing some visuals, and I would really appreciate your guys' feedback as we put this together. The bulk of the meeting and toward the end, we'll discuss just how do we actually implement the things that we've been talking about. So Senator Walsh, did you have any introductory comments to make?
No, I just think, once again, I know Shantae's on the call here, and they did a great job of giving us a lot of empirical data over the years and kind of studying that data what direction we feel is the best appropriate moving forward. So appreciate all the help that they've given us along the way, and hopefully we can bring this to a successful conclusion here very shortly.
Thank you. If the staff could put up on the screen, here's just a potential draft of an introductory statement that we put together, trying to make it short and sweet, but also encapsulating what we're doing here. I wanted to just read this here to get our meeting kicked off and take any feedback. Everything we're talking about today is a rough draft, and we can take feedback and change it before the final report is due. So we said Delaware is unique in the way it classifies and handles neighborhood roads. Compared to most states, Delaware has a significantly higher percentage of local roads that are solely the state's responsibility. During the post-war period, many subdivision communities were built at the same time. For many years, the roads in these communities were in good condition. However, as these roadways began to approach the end of their life cycle, all at the same time, legislators had to wrestle with how to get them repaired. Observing that these neighborhood roads never ranked high enough in daily usage to be included in the state's larger pavement and rehabilitation system, legislators set out to find solutions. In 1980, legislators established the Suburban Streets Program. This program allowed legislators to target local roads that did not rank high enough for inclusion in the state's pavement management system. The Suburban Streets Program was changed to the Community Transportation Fund in the year 2002. In recent years, increasingly large numbers of subdivision roads have been rated as poor or very poor, and it has become increasingly clear that the CTF system alone cannot solve this problem. Without action, the number of neighborhood roads in the poor and very poor condition will continue to exponentially increase. In 2019, DelDOT began a pilot program which modeled several small-scale ways to address some of the needed work. In 2021, HCR 4 was passed, tasking DelDOT to report on what needed to be done to permanently resolve this issue. Also in 2021, HCR 29 was passed to form a task force, to develop recommendations for the implementation of permanent solutions. The report that follows is the work of this task force. The intent is to have a clear and simple path forward to address this issue that affects every corner of our state. A solution for just 1 year will simply not suffice. In the spirit of progressing from piecemeal projects to systematic solutions, the Subdivision Street Funding Task Force presents the following report. So we can take any comments on that or anything you would like to add, or does the committee feel like that kind of represents the overall gist of what we're doing, where we're going?
I think it does, yes.
I really, on the graphic of the report, that whole piecemeal projects to systematic solutions is kind of like the subtitle of our book we're writing here, you might say. And it's kind of the thinking that we're trying to move forward with all this work. We'll send all those materials around. If any of those dates or anything was wrong, I would welcome your revisions. We will be voting on the final report next meeting. If I could have the staff show the final report. It's the 8-page document. I'm calling this the frame of the report. It's just, we still have a lot of plugging in to do. I'm going to work with DelDOT in the next 2 weeks to really get a lot of the graphics that they've done integrated in here. What you're going to see here is basically, well, first of all, the title page at the bottom, we're going to add piecemeal projects to systematic solutions as the subtitle there. But what we did here in this frame of a report is, with the assistance of the staff, go through all the meetings that we've had and just give a high-level summary of the meeting and all the issues discussed. If you could scroll down the format, you'll see here's some general information, some background, etc. And each of the meetings, we're trying to keep this like something readable, so we kind of just have some high key level points. And I would ask over the next 2 weeks that everyone on the task force take some time to review these items here. And I think interspersed throughout, it would be visually appealing if we get a lot of those graphs and charts, particularly the projection charts from last meeting included. And then the appendix will have the link to it, but also we intend to include all the PowerPoints and everything presented. So that will all be dropped there. Senator Walsh, do you have any thoughts on that frame of the report so far, or anything that you want to see added? Or
Well, I need to go through it a little more thoroughly, but on the surface, I think it's very well done. But I would like to read through it in its entirety. I have not had a chance to go through it in its entirety at this point.
One of the graphics we want to include, and if the staff could put up that, there's that file. It's I think it's called the time to good file. And as we get to the recommendations part of the report, which isn't fully done yet, we want to get something like this, and we'll have DelDOT with their great team of graphic artists make it look prettier, but essentially to show a range of options for the legislators who will be reading this report. Shante, could you just explain this report briefly for us here, just to show it, tell us what it shows, and make sure we all understand it?
Sure. So what we did was took the kind of graphics that we had for each of the funding scenarios from 20 million up to 50 million and kind of summarized it in an easier table. So if you'll recall, we had a 75% good target, and we had a green line, I believe, on each of those funding scenario charts that showed, given a different amount of funding, how long it would take for good to get above 75%. And so that first column is basically just telling you what year, based on the funding scenario, that you would get at or above the 75% for good. And the same thing for poor. So basically, as you look at the funding, a portion of it goes to keeping good and or improving good roads through preservation efforts. And a larger portion in the earlier years goes to either rehabilitating or reconstructing the poor and very poor roads to bring them to a good condition. And so when you look at kind of that split of the funding for the $20 million scenario, basically it would take you beyond 2041 before you'd ever meet that 75% good performance measure, and the same for the 15% or less in poor condition. Basically, so the more funding that you put towards subdivision streets, the better the good condition gets, and also the better, because it's reducing the number of poor or percentage of poor, it gets as well. And so when you look at, say, the $35 million scenario in 2033, you will meet your good target of 75% or greater. And in 2037, you would get your poor roads to less than 15%. So hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, it's very helpful. And then as we look to picking an amount, and I think Senator Walsh would love your comments on this. I think one of the key things that we discovered last meeting was in a time of somewhat probably record in construction inflation in the last period, we had actually a decrease in cost. We found that sweet spot of the larger contracts under the one-time pilot. So I think our recommendation should somewhere, I think we should present a chart like this so people can see options. I think one of the things we'll have to decide as policymakers is, if you spend higher amounts now, you get there a lot quicker and you spend less overall. And hopefully you can keep it maintained for a reasonable cost. And then the lower you spend it, we're going to actually, by my back of the napkin math, be spending more overall. But that'll be some of the decisions we'll have to make as policymakers. I think I want to welcome our bond chair and committee member, Rep. Heffernan. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. And Rep. Smith will be joining too. Under Rep. Heffernan's leadership, we were able to, I think we'll transition now into the recommendations, get the door opener, shall we say, of the pilot program to be $10 million a year. And I believe, and Shante can confirm, that amount of money is in perpetuity accounted for in the Transportation Trust Fund. The 10 million, that is the new number for we're not going to call it a pilot anymore, but what was the pilot?
Right, so we were basically waiting for this task force to kind of make those recommendations. But yes, for this fiscal year, we did have 10 million in the traditional pilot, as well as the additional one-time $20 million. So with the, if this task force recommends to keep that 10 million and then find ways to fund the other, whether it be 20 or 25 million, whatever the recommendation is, yes, we'd be able to accommodate the 10 in our budget.
And I just want to bring up that as the bond bill committee last year, we had voted to make the pilot permanent and make it that we would fund at 10 million money. We have the money, but that would be the next step. So that was voted on by the committee already.
So we're definitely in a strong position there. And that's what I think we need to discuss now, is figuring out one of the recommendations I think I would like to arrive at, and we'll take your guys' thoughts on this, is getting a new line in the bond bill appendix called, well, we were thinking about Subdivision Streets Pavement Management System, to emphasize this is a system. There will be, as Shante talked about, maintenance and rehabilitation in this system. We'll have to discuss possibly with the Controller General's office where that goes in the appendix and where the extra funds come from. I think this year, the number one goal should be to at least get $20 million in one-time funds to combine with the pilot money so we can reproduce the 30 million effort of last year. And I hope that after 2 years of just that increased volume of projects and success we're seeing, we will have momentum. I know there's been talk about, I know there's different people are not always fans of using general funds in these ways. I mean, I have a draft bill, which we can throw up on the screen. This is something that was talking with Bert from the Controller Generals about, just how do we express, obviously we can't encumber future General Assemblies, but this language here is similar to a bill that was passed several years ago regarding Dell Tech, in which the General Assembly said we want to fund bonds for these improvements at a certain level over a certain period of time. So I was thinking about in our report recommending something like this. I think the actual work and the programming of the system will probably be done via epilogue. But this here basically says there is established in the Office of State Treasurer a special account to be known as the Subdivision Street Pavement Management System. It is the intent of the General Assembly to fund said account by an annual appropriation of at least 35 million for 10 years. That's a boilerplate number. We'll probably, basically that is the 10 million of the pilot and then whatever above we recommend, which I'm hoping we can land on something around 20 millions. But I think something like this is important so we can express and get agreement that if we don't do this for 10 years, it doesn't solve the problem. This thing only works, the projections only work if we repeat it. And it's not binding, but I mean, are there any thoughts on legislation like this to at least get some general agreement about a direction and plan?
Well, that was one of my questions. Do we go upstairs with this? As we do, we talk in bond about this at times. Do we go upstairs legislatively with this? Or do we do this in epilogue language in bond? I know Ruth Ann's not on. I know she's at Joint Finance right now, but that's kind of a question that we should kick around. And the other thing I thought that might be useful too, back to that funding chart, if we could have another column with overall cost, right? Because it takes X amount of years spending 30 million, but it takes less spending 50 million. I know we can figure it out in our heads, but a total cost would be another thing in that column that we can, that shows, even though it sounds like a big nut at 50 million, but it's only taken, 7 years? So maybe another column there. But as far as that legislation, I'm not sure how we want to proceed with that, whether legislatively or within the bond.
Jack, it's Nicole. Why would you think that we would need to go epilogue on that? Like, why wouldn't we just run the bill?
Well, you know how things go when it goes upstairs.
One of the things Senator Poor, and welcome, and for the record, Senator Poor, our bond co-chair from the Senate, is here, so welcome, Senator. I'm not sure when you hopped on. I know you were having tech issues, but we had talked about, did you hear about trying to take what's called the pilot now and, this year, 20 million in one-time money into a new line in the appendix called the Subdivision Street Pavement Management System? That's what we're kind of looking to do.
Mm-hmm.
And discussing how would we do that? Like, is that, there are issues now. I would like Shante to chime in. I believe we cannot spend that level of money forever without cutting other projects. There's not existing funds in the TTF alone to do that. So we have to decide, do we pursue using one-time funds as they're available? Do you pursue a model in which, as open space and farmland, money from the general fund at a level of 10 or 15 into it? That's another option. Some people aren't fans of that approach. But the bill essentially was more of an intent, like here, we're agreeing to do this. And then to your point, Senator Poor and Senator Walsh, how we actually do it, I would think that would be something that the bond bill could figure out, how to create that language and that new system. And this is where the rubber meets the road as far as actually getting it done. So, Senator Walsh.
Yeah, I mean, I was just, like I said, I just kicked that around. I didn't know the feelings of my colleagues on the call here. I know we originally talked about it being in epilogue, but sure, I mean, I don't know.
I think that, we are at a place where people understand that our roads need to be repaved, redone. I mean, look at what's happening on 95. We've got the Army Corps coming for the Roth Bridge. I mean, there's so much happening that I think that, running a piece of legislation, I think people are we've talked about it so much, and you and Sean have done an amazing job in educating everybody about this. DelDOT has stepped up and said, okay, this is what it's going to cost. I feel like we're at a point that we should not have any issues by saying we're going to allot X amount of dollars and this is what the go-get is over the next few years to get it done.
Rep Heffernan, I see your hand up.
Hi, the only thing I think we need to keep in mind about this whole thing is, one, what is the capacity at DelDOT given all the other, work we have with the infrastructure bill that came federally. And second, not every year, and is like we have as good a year as this year upcoming and last year. Like, it's not, even with farmland preservation and open space, the number is 10 million, but when we don't have it, we can't fund it at that level. So that's something. There's the two things that we need to keep in mind. One is, even if we say that's what we want to do, sometimes you can't. And two, we can't come up with a number that's beyond the capacity of DENREC to get the projects done. And that, as long as we're realistic in those respects, I'm all for. I mean, I have like some of the worst roads in the state in my district, like that are subdivision streets. I mean, there's some really bad ones.
Yeah, I would let Shante answer that, but I know we've had this discussion, Representative Heffernan, about that. And as you know, last meeting, I believe it was last meeting, we actually saw, due to the increased funding that we put in, more participation in contractors and less cost, actually. So I think we've kind of started to fish that out. I know DelDOT, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I believe they feel that, even up to the $50 million level, it wouldn't be a problem as far as moving forward with those projects, that amount of projects. Am I right in stating that, Shante?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. So yes, we have seen over the years, over the course of the pilot, definitely some efficiency in getting, more mileage done for a reduced cost. There's obviously a limit to that, so it doesn't go to zero at some point. I would say a couple of things. Yes, we have the new infrastructure bill, which is going to add $100 million per year to our program for a variety of different types of projects. So we have that in the mix. We heard from DCA at the last meeting, and I think giving certainty makes the ability for the contracting community to kind of ramp up. So whether we're at 30 or 50, if they know that that's what it's going to be for several years, they can, increase the number of paving crews and get more equipment and all those things. So all of that kind of factors into it. I feel very, confident that we can deliver the 30 or 35 million per year from a, packaging and advertising standpoint, and having, the adequate inspection staff. I think when you get to the 50 million range, my only concern is not so much us being able to deliver it, but we're creating kind of a blip 20 or 30 years from now of having to reconstruct all of these roads again at that time. So I think we have to be a little bit cognizant of that. We don't want to create a situation where we're setting it up for failure kind of in the future. And so, that $30 to $35 million mark seems like a pretty, sweet spot, if you will, given what we've seen over the course of the years.
Thank you, Shante. And I think that is the kind of the spot we want to land at. So I think we should look at some kind of bill like that, even if it's a resolution, just to express here's where we're going. Check in with the Controller General. How do we get it done and get that new line? And I guess Senator Poore and Rep. Heffernan both had great, we need to do this. As Senator Poore said, Rep. Heffernan also, we can't overcommit ourselves. And I think one of the ways we can get to where we need to go is have a strong recommendation and unified that whatever happens, that this year we get another 20 million of one-time funds, which we have. And I think after 2 years of that $30 million a year, you're going to see so many people statewide seeing, you're going to make believers of this. And I think we will have to come back and figure out, I don't know if there's funds being transferred as far as like the federal funds. One of the 4 eligible things are water projects. Maybe some of that water project money can be evenly replaced and there are funds available. If not, we will have to address that in future years, how to continue that. But I think if our recommendation can say, we're recommending this SSPMS at 30 million a year, and we're recommending $20 million of one-time funds in whatever fiscal year we're in, I think that's a strong recommendation to get us at least across the finish line for this year. And then we'll have to see, I know there's the TTF, at some point we'll have to have, I don't know the overall health of it. I mean, there will be a time in the next couple of years, I assume, adjustments have to be made revenue-wise. Shante, I don't know if it's like, I don't know. It's certainly it's reliant on fuel fees that are, cars are getting more efficient. So, I mean, maybe at that time when adjustments are made, we can look at indexing or there's ways to get the latter half of our 10-year plan here done. But if we can agree, the members on this call, that just really work together to get that 20 million, we're not touching CTF. Everyone has their CTF. It has nothing to do with CTF. And this is this separate program. And already, I mean, people haven't, I know at least in my district, a lot of this work hasn't begun yet. But when people see the volume of work that was able to be done last year, it's going to be really impressive, and it's going to help us get across the finish line on that. So if it's fine with you guys, I think we'll consult with some attorneys and see whether that draft bill needs to be a resolution or a bill. I mean, obviously it's not binding. No future General Assembly will have to do it, but hopefully we get the movement on that, and then we will circle back with the Controller General and the bond bill chairs about getting that new title in there. I think it's really important we stop calling it the pilot, because it's no longer a pilot. We've been successful, and it's going very well. So I see Rep. Smith joined us. Welcome, Rep. Smith. We'll make sure to mark you present. I'm not sure how much of the conversion you've heard. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add at this time.
No, I heard most of it. I got in when Senator Walsh was talking about should we go upstairs or not. So I got in all of the, I guess, meaningful dialogue on how we're going to go about doing it. I think looking into with an attorney, whether it's a resolution or a bill, and always looking forward if it needs to be epilogue or not, it's a good approach. You can kind of do those things in parallel.
Okay, as we wind down here, just to kind of summarize, make sure we're on the same page. We have the due date of March 1st. So everybody, I'm going to really try to work with the members and the staff this week to get this really wrapped up. I'll be reaching out to Del for help with your graphics team to get all those beautiful charts you had integrated and right size into our report. Senator Walsh, could you take the lead on working with the Controller General's office about figuring out how do we get that thing set up, get some draft? I know I didn't have it on the graphic. I believe the Controller General did draft some potential epilogue language to create this, and I will send that around to the committee to review to see if that worked. I believe epilogue, are we able to say, it's the intent to do this at a certain level and put like an intent language in epilogue? Has that been done before? Like express the intent of 30 million a year? Rep. Heffernan is saying yes. So in addition to the resolution, we can put it in there so it's very clear what our intent is. So we'll be doing all those different things. And then I ask you guys to keep near your emails, and we'll get this final report, hopefully in time that we can review it, come back for a very brief meeting. We'll do a doodle poll and do a vote on the final report so it can be published, and hopefully it'll be the perfect segue for when Bond Bill meets soon to discuss. I know Delta, I think, is presenting early on in the Bond Bill hearing, so we can discuss that. So hopefully I captured everything that we're talking about. Does anybody have any questions or comments you would like to add?
Chair Matthews, the only thing that I would like to be on the record as saying is if we can make sure that any language that's developed limits DelDOT's financial contribution to the 10 million, that would be really helpful, because that we have set aside in our budget already. Anything in excess of that, that means we're cutting other projects or programs. And so if we can just make sure that that is clear, that would be helpful.
So the epilogue will say that of this new SSPMS, 10 million of which will be from the existing pilot program, and the other 20 million is intended to be from a variety this year. I would imagine one-time money in future years. So yes, we can definitely make that clarification. Rep Heffernan, I see your hand up.
Oh, and I was just going to say, I thought Nicole had some ideas of what to call it. I don't care what we call it as long as we keep doing it. The former pilot, perhaps it'll be like the singer formerly known as Prince. You know. Okay.
Yeah, it's I don't know if you guys were on when we started. We talked about calling it the Subdivision Street Pavement Management System, or it's just something to really emphasize the systematic thinking that we're doing here, because we're trying to go from piecemeal to system. So, Senator Poor, I see your mic is off. Were you saying something?
I was just going to say, look, I agree with you. I think we were past the pilot phase last year, and I think Senator Walsh was telling us, like, get over the pilot, and let's move on. And again, this is for the well-being of everybody in the state. I mean, no one. I just had an issue in my district, and everybody was quick to help. But, I don't need to have 4 or 5 people getting flat tires because of a bad road. So, this is a great movement.
Thank you. And then just to close, the one thing I just want to make sure that we include when we work on this epilogue is just a specific mention of maintenance too. Because I do think that as we're trying to make believers going forward, when people in newer areas of the state or newer divisions see crack sealing 5 years in, or whatever DelDOT's going to do, there's going to be people who get work done from this fund that's going to keep the good and keep the good from getting bad. So then we can focus more on the bad because the good stays good. So I think that we'll definitely mention that, and that's that part of that system. So could the staff open it up for public comment if there's any?
If you would like to provide public comment, please use the raise hand function at this time. Chair Matthews, I believe that we do not have any public comment.
Thanks, everyone. We're very close to wrapping this up. I appreciate all your work, and you guys have a good night.
You too. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.